The Fallen Protectors are the second encounter in the Siege of Orgrimmar. They are made up of Rook Stone Toe, he's Softfoot, and Son Tenderheart.
The main focus of the fight is getting the 3 down to 0 life at the same time. Not the exact moment, but within a few seconds of each other.
If the raid fails to down all 3 at the same time, then the bosses that died will be healed back a little bit of health through their ability called Bond of the Golden Lotus. Rook has several abilities. The first is Vengeful Strikes, which deals large amounts of damage and stuns targets in a cone in front of Rook. The next ability is Corrupted Brew. Rook will throw a cask of brew at a random range raider, which will create an AoE when it lands. This needs to be avoided. The last ability of Rook uses is Clash. Rook will charge around to random players, casting another move called Corruption Kick. Corruption Kick looks like the monk's spinning crane kick and deals a very good amount of damage. If Rook uses Clash on you, do your best to move out of the Corruption Kick as quick as you can. He Softfoot has a few main abilities. The first one is Garrett, which will bleed a random raider. Garrett will stay on the affected target until Softfoot casts Desperate Measures. Garrett cannot be dispelled. The next ability is Gouge. Gouge will incapacitate Softfoot's current target. If Gouge is successful, Softfoot will temporarily go and attack a random raider. If the tank turns around when Gouge is used, then they will simply be knocked away and won't get incapacitated. Softfoot will also use Noxious Poison, which will leave void zones whenever Softfoot hits with his melee weapons, and Instant Poison, which will cause him to do large amounts of damage when he attacks. Softfoot will alternate between the 2 poisons, and this is why Softfoot needs to be tanked out and away from the raid. Son's main abilities are Shawseer, Shadow Word Bane, and Calamity. Shawseer will target a random raider, dealing damage to that raider and an AoE around the raider. This is similar to a Priest's Mindseer. If the spell is interrupted, it will immediately be recasted on a new target, so move away from the raid if it targets you. Shadow Word Bane is a dot that is used on a random raider. Whenever Shadow Word Bane ticks, it will jump to another raider up to a maximum of 4 other players. This ability is able to be dispelled. Calamity is an ability that will deal 30% of players' health as damage, and will remove all applications of Shadow Word Bane. Calamity is unavoidable.
Each boss also casts a move called Desperate Measures when they reach 66 and 33% health. Each boss does something different.
The bosses will not cast their regular moves while in Desperate Measures.
Rook will summon 3 adds, the embodied Misery, Sorrow, and Gloom. These 3 adds need to be focused down once they appear.
The 3 adds should ideally be picked up, but the embodied Misery definitely should be kited to avoid void zones. The adds each cast their own abilities. During this phase, players should spread out, killing the adds in the following order: Sorrow, Gloom, and then Misery. The embodied Gloom will cast an AoE called Corruption Shock. This ability needs to be interrupted. Embodied Misery will cast Defile Ground. This will be cast on the ground under the tank, placing a void zone. This is why the ad needs to be kited. Embodied Sorrow will cast Inferno Strike. This will AoE one target, splitting the massive amounts of damage amongst everyone in the AoE. Everyone should stack up on the player with the yellow ring around him.
When in Desperate Measures, Softfoot creates an embodied Anguish. The Anguish will need to be killed in order for he to come back.
The Anguish will cast Mark of the Anguish on a random target, rooting them in place. That target will receive a little button on their screen, allowing them to pass it on to someone else. Once the Anguish gives the target 5 to 7 stacks of Shadow Weakness, the button should be used to throw away the ad to another target. I don't recommend throwing the ad to a tank. The ad leaves a debuff called Debilitation, which reduces the target's armor. Also, don't constantly throw the ad around.
During Desperate Measures, Sun uses an ability called Dark Meditation, damaging everyone in the raid every second. The raid will need to stand in the purple bubble Sun creates in order to receive 35% less damage.
Sun will summon 2 adds, the Embodied Despair and Desperation. The 2 adds are not much of a threat, but they need to be killed in order for Sun to come back. Many little adds will also appear, but any damage they take will just be transferred to the 2 big ones.
Ranged DPS need to kill the Embodied Despair and Embodied Desperation. The melee DPS need to kill the Despair spawns and Desperation spawns.
The main premise of the fight is to follow a rotation of killing.
So DPS, attack Rook until he gets to 66%, where he will cast Desperate Measures. Then attack Softfoot until he gets to 66%. Then Sun until she gets to 66%. Follow the same rotation of Rook, Softfoot, and Sun until they get down to 33%. Once they all have cast Desperate Measures a second time, slowly and equally DPS the 3 down to 0.
Tanks will have to keep a few things in mind during the fight. Rook and he will need to be tanked. Sun is often casting on her own.
Tank Rook facing away from the raid. He casts Vengeful Strikes, which do a decent amount of damage.
Tank he away from the raid and turn around whenever Softfoot casts Gouge, otherwise you'll be incapacitated. Healers will need to be prepared to heal the damage from Garrett and Calamity, which deals 30% of the player's health.
Also, they will need to dispel Shadow Word Bane.
Also be mindful of the other many possible damaging abilities that occur throughout the fight, such as Sun's Dark Meditation, which will cause the entire raid to start taking damage.
The entire raid needs to be aware that Sun casts Shawseer, And if you are targeted, you need to book it away from the raid in order to minimize collateral damage.
Also use your noggin and don't get hit by things like Corrupted Brew and Corruption Kick. And don't stand in poison zones that Softfoot will leave behind.
If you are really struggling with the encounter, focus on correct positioning and appropriate DPS targets.
That's all you need to know for breezing through the Fallen Protectors.
Good luck, adventurer.